It's time now to check your money with America's money maven, Vicki Brackens. Vicki Brackens is the president of Brackens Financial Solutions Network, LLC, and the registered representative of LPL Financial, member SIPC. Vicki, spring is upon us.
Spring is upon us, George, but guess what else?
What else?
We got our first interest rate hike in 3 years this week.
Like what, 0.25 or something like that?
0.25, okay.
And I'm glad I know that, right?
Yes,
See?
I am. Wait a minute. Okay, America's money maven just
Come
that
on now.
But anyway, yes, okay. The Federal Reserve, for the first time in 3 years, since 2019, decided that it was the appropriate time to actually raise interest rates 0.25%. From 0.25 to 0.5. So it doesn't, when you look at the actual numbers, they don't seem to be that high, but what really is driving the news is the fact that this was done, the first time that it was done in 3 years. And the reasoning being that the inflationary numbers continue to rise, and they thought that at this point in time, it would be appropriate to try and put a little dampening on the economy, so that we would not get into super or what they call hyperinflationary periods in the future. Based on the notes that were also attached from Chairman Powell, they're anticipating that we probably will have anywhere from 5 to 6 additional rate hikes over the next year, with possibly even 3 more coming into 2023. And then at that point in time, they feel that they will probably be through. Now, we all know that this is a forward-looking prediction. We all know that things can change, because if you go back and think about 2018, when Janet Yellen started to raise interest rates, and then we got this screeching yell, okay, in the market right after that. They had to come back and undo that because the economy slowed down too fast. Hopefully that will not happen this time. We've got a lot of things that are going on relative to supply chain issues that are driving inflation relative to gas pricing, things around all kinds of commodities, because we still have a backlog of supply chain issues around the world. The other thing that happened this week, George, which is not, and I don't want to say that the Federal Reserve raising rates was bad news, because it really wasn't. It's a reaction to the mandate that they have, and this is the job that they have been assigned to take care of. But another thing that happened this week is that we started to see some lowering of oil prices, not necessarily at the pump. I wish I could say we could see them at the pump, but as far as the actual price per barrel of oil.
Before you go to the oil prices, and we're seeing the below 100 for the first time in a minute, can you go back to that the interest rate hike was about slowing the economy and inflation? I think you said something to that.
Right.
Effect. Did I understand that right?
That's correct.
Can you explain what that means and why you would want to raise hike, like the connection between the rate hike and inflation and my pocketbook?
Sure. Okay. So visually think of it this way. If you were speeding down the road and you were driving from here to Buffalo, which is a pretty level area, right? I-90.
Right.
We've got a nice steady pace, and we're all supposed to stay somewhere around 65 miles per hour. But all of a sudden, the road started to slope, and we started to pick up speed beyond what we could control. We need to pump the brakes. Basically, what the Federal Reserve is doing is pumping the brakes, because we're picking up speed faster than we can equalize pricing and supply. When those things are not equal, we have more supply. If we have more supply than we need, then prices come down. But if we have less supply than we need, prices go up. And when those things start to happen, we start to now see what is called inflation. We have fewer and fewer products being traced by more and more dollars. And when we get into an inflationary period, you can have your salary go up and still fall behind. Think of it that way. In fact, we had a lot of places raise their salaries to $15 or $20 an hour.
Right.
Yet you're still hearing the American population say, I'm not making any progress. Why? Because the cost of goods and services is increasing at a rate faster than your actual revenue, your actual income.
Yes.
And so what starts to happen when we have inflation around pricing of goods and services, we could have a contraction or a loss in spending power because our economy is not keeping up as far as the revenue necessary to live every day. So that's why the Federal Reserve has a mandate to do basically two things: full employment, to do all, use the economic tools. They don't go out and make jobs, but that there are tools that help with creating full employment and keeping the inflation numbers within a range that does not cause us to lose economic spending power. And so they are always using tools, and the tools that they have available are primarily purchasing of bonds and raising of interest rates. So that was the other thing that was also part of the commentary today, is that they are going to start tapering, meaning no longer purchasing large quantities of bonds, because they no longer believe that that is going to be the direction necessary to keep the economy stable. You have to, and it feels like eons ago, but it was only about 2 years ago, we had the pandemic upon us.
Right.
We had to shut down the entire economy. Everybody had to go home. Businesses had to shutter. And so to make sure that there was enough liquidity, enough money in the system, money was pumped into the system. I mean, billions and billions and billions of dollars, PPP and the what was it? I've been stimulated, stimulus checks and all those types of things. Well, all that money was in the system, but we were also not producing goods and services, and that's where the imbalance started to take place. So for you and for me, with interest rates going up, we're going to pay more also on our credit cards. We're going to pay more also on your mortgages, anything in a lending capacity. Again, we want to keep a balance so that you are not losing spending power, and that's why the raising of interest rates to make that happen. Does that help, George?
Yeah, it helps very much. But on the other side of it, though, you see companies. There's also the shrinkage, right? So you're paying more, but you're getting less. It's just, it's
have you noticed the side of my donut in my package?
Okay, right. It's funny because I bought a half a gallon of milk the other day. And it wasn't a half a gallon.
You didn't feel like a half a gallon, did you?
No, it wasn't. It was. I said, this container looks skinny, and it was actually 2 ounces less than a half a gallon. It was 62 ounces and not 64 ounces. So
right. Okay. So we have all of those types of things that we also have to contend with, and that's where businesses are trying to because their costs are increasing. So it is definitely a linked structure, so that one thing leads to another, that leads to another. Okay.
So when I asked you to explain inflation for our listeners, you were about to talk about oil prices going under 100.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the first time, we've been watching oil prices go up above $100 a barrel. If we think about it, we probably were somewhere in the 40s about a year and a half ago. Because why? Someone asked me, why did it drop so far? Again, supply and demand. When everybody had to go home, businesses weren't operating. There's a bunch of oil sitting in the ground and sitting in the barrels and sitting there. No one needed it. Okay, so to entice the consumer to buy it, prices went down. Now, prices have gone back up because of supply issues, but also very, very much because of, unfortunately, what's happening in Ukraine and happening there in Russia. That is driving it. But we had a process right now that we look like oil prices are dropping. And here's where I was getting sad, George. China is experiencing its highest level of COVID outbreak again since 2020.
I heard. Right. There's another strain, right?
There's another strain. Okay. And because of that, they are shutting down again. And being one of the largest, it depends on who measures it, let's say second largest economy in the world, when you start shutting down operations, their usage of oil definitely is going to drop, more supply. And there's also some negotiation taking place between the US and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela on bringing in more supply. So those things are causing pricing to go down. How successful they're going to be on the negotiation, I don't know, but definitely what's happening in China is impacting oil pricing at this point in time. Well, George, that's a lot of economic news.
Yes, it is.
Okay. But okay, you will start to see in your credit card. So here's what you need to think about. We may not all be able to do it, but think about this. If you can pay off some of your debt with some of the extra cash that's sitting around, you might want to think about it, because it's going to cost more to service debt going forward. If you are in the middle of negotiating a deal for a house, I'd say get it done, because mortgage rates are going to go up for sure. But pay attention to what we say, stay tuned, because there is in the notes an indication that we're probably going to get 6 more rate hikes for this year. But then that sounds like a lot in there. That is a lot. But by the time you put 0.25 on each one of those, it means that we'll end the year somewhere around 1.9% to 2% for the year, which, if you recall, over and over and over in the conversations, Chairman Yellen at the time she was chair kept saying we want to be at 2%. So we're back to where we needed to be. The sky is not falling. All right, George. Okay, I'll encourage everyone. Please reach out to us on YouTube, share, like, and subscribe. Be sure that you follow us on Facebook. And if you have a question, area code 315-930-4499. And don't forget to send your questions to Mr. Michael Jennings, because he'll be back on in 2 weeks with his segment concerning the friendly neighborhood advisor. And for that, at that point, George, I will say our plate is full.
All right. Vicki Brackens is the president of Brackens Financial Solutions Network, LLC, and the registered representative of LPL Financial, member SIPC. She is America's money maven.